You're listening to Rikki and Jimmy on Relationships, the show where we uncover the thoughts and behaviors that are sabotaging your relationship and what you can do about it. Jimmy and I are passionate about sharing the ways that imperfect partners like you and I can shift unhealthy relational dynamics and create closeness. So welcome. Drop your defenses and open your heart, eyes, and ears. Let's learn how to be the best partner we can be together. Welcome back. This is Rikki and Jimmy on Relationships. And for our listeners who don't know, today we have Stan Tatkin. He's a doctor of clinical psychology, a marriage and family therapist, and the author of my personal favorite relationship book, Wired for Love. Jimmy and I have been gone for a little bit while I move into my new house, but here I am, and we are super, super excited for this to be the first episode coming back to you guys. We've missed you, and we've really appreciated all the messages saying, "Where'd you guys go?"
Yes, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Tatkin. Just a quick story. That is actually true what Rikki said. The first time we met, we obviously started going over what relationship books have you read, which ones are your favorite, and she said Wired for Love was her favorite book. So that's needless to say, we were very excited that you were willing to talk with us today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I wanted to let you know too, Stan, that when I'd been working hard in my own distressed relationship for about a year and a half, my partner finally came to me and said, "You're different in like the best way. And I don't know what you've been doing, but I want in. So if you could recommend one book for me to read, which one would it be?" And I was just like, immediately, Stan Tatkin's Wired for Love. And I got to say, and he's an avoidant leaning person, my partner. And just the way that you address avoidant attachment as islands instead of avoidant, which feels a little demeaning for them. He was a completely different person after he read your book. It was amazing. And so anyone who comes to me with avoidant attachment especially, but maybe just a couple who wants a good book to come closer together, that's my number one recommend every single time.
Oh, that's really kind. Thank you so much. Well, I think you'll be happy to know that there's going to be an updated revision of it.
I'll be getting it. Yeah.
And hopefully I don't ruin it, but that, it's been some years since I wrote that book. So I'm looking forward to that.
So if you don't mind, kind of just going into a little bit about why, or kind of what sparked this passion in you to kind of get into this field.
Oh boy, that's a long story. Should I start from where I was born? I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and there's something about getting older and looking back and finding the thread that connects everything. Because as we, are in present tense and moving forward, there's kind of a fog. It's hard to know that what you're doing is going to lead to anything. And there were a lot of things I was doing in my life that I had no idea would lead to anything at all. I was in the music business, and then I did, acting and was trained in theater.
Really?
All of this while I was trying to find myself again after leaving music, because I started very young. And as I look back, even to elementary school, it makes sense where I am today. And that's really kind of fantastic. There are also a lot of people along the way that enabled this to happen, including my survival on the planet. But I really trained in a lot of different approaches, and I love this field still to this day. And so, by the crest of my, of my career, I was interested in prevention, starting with infants and very young children and their caregivers. And I had a different way of working that was modeled on the Hinks Institute in Toronto, called a program called Watch, Wait, and Wonder. And I was amazed. 8 weeks with children that weren't developing well or had behavior problems. At the end of 8 weeks, they were great parents may
Wow.
look the same, but there was enough of a tweak to change the trajectory of an infant or young child, and so that impressed me. So that set me off on a mission, because I was already studying infant brain development, neuroscience, and autonomic nervous system regulation theory and attachment. So unfortunately, I couldn't get enough people into my practice that were willing to do prevention work. In our country, we're not big on prevention. No. So I went through a divorce, and that devastated me. And my only the only thing that saved me was my practice and teaching, university. So I decided to shift to couples, because due to John Gottman's brilliant work in the psychobiology area early on, I really thought, hey, there's a one-to-one resemblance here, almost one-to-one, with infant attachment systems. The only difference being symmetry, right? The parent-child relationship is asymmetric. The adult pair bonding situation is totally symmetric, unless people decide otherwise. And I found that I was able to actually do my prevention work and discover why and how I messed up in my marriage. And also, I found Tracy, who's the love of my life, somebody I had a crush on in junior high and high school. Oh. She didn't know. But we re-met in our 40s, early 40s, and then both of us found that our relationship started to be something, started terming secure functioning, and both of our careers really jettisoned, and as well as our happiness and our health. So that too also led to what is now called PACT, a psychobiological approach to couple therapy. So that's pretty much the story.
That's amazing. It is really remarkable how something traumatic like divorce can really kind of lead us to find ourselves and our passions. I love that things like that can bloom out of that kind of misery and darkness. That's my story anyway.
Yeah, I know. We talked a little bit about that. It was dark.
Yeah. I was wondering, one of the questions I had for you was, how did you come to have such incredible empathy for the different attachment styles? Because so many therapists and researchers and writers who talk about the different attachment styles really don't. There's a tendency to kind of demonize avoidance and even anxious attachers sometimes, but I never hear that in your writing ever.
I think it's because, partly because my training also was in disorders of the self, personality disorders, and those are very difficult to treat historically, according to conventional wisdom. And so I think that working inpatient in a hospital for years, and also my own analysis, my own therapy, as well as really understanding attachment as not a personality, but simply an adaptation to one's environment during infancy, postnatally, which nobody can have any control over. And it really is a memory system of what happens if I depend on somebody. And so I expect the same thing is going to happen, and I protect myself, defend myself. It just so happens that the way I defend myself looks threatening to another person, and that's why it's a problem.
Yeah,
but this is the human condition more than it is anything else.
Absolutely. That was one of my favorite things about all your writing on this, is that none of us are doomed by our way of relating. We can all learn better and healthier ways to relate to each other. And that's a message that I try to bring forward in my own writing and messages online as well. It's hopeful,
I will add that, yes, all of that is true. And during COVID, I really started to focus more on the human condition and the brain and the limitations of the brain, and how human primates, since the beginning of our our appearance on the planet. Very difficult species. And,
To say the least, yeah.
and to get into diagnoses, which a lot of people right now are doing online, and using terms like island anchor wave, unfortunately, to bat each other over the head. It is actually a big mistake, because the human condition is enough to explain why we're all basically assholes. We're all basically difficult, unreliable, warlike, fickle, moody, opportunistic, and xenophobic, right? It's all there. It's all there. So we don't need to get to that other stuff. What's nice about attachment is that understanding it is freedom, in a sense that knowledge is power. If I know your attachment injuries, I'm going to understand what you do to protect yourself. And instead of doing something that's going to amplify your fears, I'm going to do something to help you. And I'm also going to be able to take account for what I do. Because if I'm insecure, I'm going to do things that are not secure functioning, not fair, not sensitive, and I will have to make amends for that every time. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to interject really quickly, because you reminded me of something that you said in your new book. I don't know when it's actually coming out, but it's called
In Each Other's Care.
Oh, it's out. In Each Other's Care. You said countless things that I just thought were fascinating, but I loved what you said, and you just touched on it right there. You said you are your partner's whisperer. I love that, just that phrase.
Yeah.
You said it's your job and theirs too. Predicting your partner means knowing their vulnerabilities, fears, concerns, as well as what makes them happy, feel safe, secure, appreciated, respected, loved, and wanted. And it's like what you were just talking about. I mean, we really have to be each other's whisperer.
Well, because our lives depend on it. It's not a luxury, and I keep trying to get that across. It's a necessity. So you and I, Jimmy, are in any kind of a union, and let's say at the bottom of that is survival. But also, it's maybe to make money, or maybe it is to win something. I have to know you. I have to know you if I'm depending on you and you me for that end, right? That goal, that vision, that sense of purpose. If I don't know you, we're not going to win. We're not going to make money. We're not going to survive, because I have to know you inside out, especially when the pressure's on and when we're under the most stress. That's when it's going to count. So it's not fanciful, this idea of being an expert on each other. It is actually what everyone knows. And when they're in the military, or cop car partners, or a dance troupe, or whatever, I have to know, you have to know my vulnerabilities, my weaknesses, and how you're going to work with me. Otherwise, we all lose. So
that touches on another essential aspect that you talk in the book, which is trust, obviously. Without trust, no relationship can survive.
Well, it can survive, but you can't create anything. It's like a factory. It shuts down. It doesn't make anything, because the creators are battling all the time, and they can't make decisions. They can't come up with new things. They can't function as a team. That's why.
Do you feel like? Yep. Sorry. Rikki, go ahead.
Would you say that a big problem, a big part of a lot of relationship problems, is that people are a little bit too individualistic, and I'm here taking care of myself and you take care of yourself, and really what they could use a lot more of is team effort and responsibility to each other?
Yes, absolutely. I am big on culture change, and I'm not the only one in my field. Some of the best known thought leaders in couples, we all got together and created a think tank. It didn't work out in the end, because there are too many cooks and too many egos. But the best of the best, because we all believed that there's something fundamentally in the culture that is going to lead us into civil war. Now, that was way before what's happening today, but it wasn't hard to see it coming. because of the fragmentation of our culture, no longer having a shared purpose and a shared vision that serves everybody. When that happens, people tribalize and split off, and they do things that are not pro-social to the larger system. So, yeah, part of that is this rugged individualism that denies our dependency as a species. We're pack animals. We're built to be with people, not to be alone. So, yes, I'm very much, this is sort of a pushback against that.
Well, sorry,
Go
Jimmy. I just love how you really talk about that dependence on each other being kind of a beautiful, wonderful thing. That's a message that I don't hear enough in a lot of the books that I pick up. I think it's kind of wonderful when we can lean on somebody who knows us really well, someone who's our own whisperer. They know what hurts us and they know what soothes us too. I think that's awesome.
Two people can always do better than one if they have a shared vision, shared purpose, and they constantly look to where they are the same and where they agree, and use their differences as the superpower, right? And that is a conscious social emotional intelligence factor of being able to reason at that level of morality that we need each other. Therefore, I am pro-self and pro-relationship at the same time, not simply one or the other, right?
Right.
And that takes, raising the bar in terms of orientation culture, right? We're accustomed to either being pro-relationship and surrender the self, or simply pro-self and, you're on your own. But the real task is being both at the same time.
Yeah, I love the way that you talk about that in the new book. And I'm sure you did it in Wired for Love too. The new book is a little bit more fresh in my mind. Excuse me. But you just talk so much about teamwork. I mean, we're on the same team, and it's so quick that we forget that we're on the same team. I mean, in every argument, we might forget that we're on the same team, and that can so quickly divide us. And you do a good job at just kind of bringing people back to let's be able to kind of co-regulate, kind of soothe each other. Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, because it's so easy for all of us, especially if you kind of lean as an island or even as a anxious, it's so easy to become dysregulated. And I don't know what you've seen as kind of helpful tips to get back in sync with each other, get regulated together.
So let's say Rikki and I are on a tight wire together. And we're facing each other. We have to keep our eyes on each other, because if one of us begins to tip or show signs of a problem with confidence, the other has to do something quickly, because if one of them goes down, they both go down. So that is the image of co-regulation. We do this naturally, usually when we're face to face, eye to eye, and sometimes skin to skin. But we often don't do this, and therefore we start to lose track of the other person's moment by moment state of mind. So the reason I'm looking at Rikki, let's say we're not a tight wire, but we're talking about a stressful topic. I have to keep Rikki safe and secure at all times. Otherwise, I can't influence her, right? I can't influence her. She can't influence me.
Right.
As soon as she tips into even a little bit of danger or threat, she's not going to care about anything I say. And she's not going to care about my interests or concerns. She's going to rally around her own. That's the human condition.
Survival.
Yes, survival.
Right? Yeah.
And this survival instinct is very acute in all of us, even with the people we love the most. Maybe even especially because of memory. So that's why co-regulation is important, because we're aggressive, warlike creatures that pick up threat very quickly and actually subconsciously through pattern recognition.
And you talk about that in the book. You say that how important it is to maintain eye contact, and we might have a tendency to look away, but it's so important to stay in focus with you. Would you say that that's potentially something like when you're not comfortable with vulnerability, it's very difficult to maintain that eye contact?
It is, unless you have a purpose. So if you're maintaining eye contact, some people were intimidated through eye contact. Some people felt self-conscious and intruded upon by a parent who acted like they could see the inside of that person. Or they never had the eye contact sustained, and so it's very, very uncomfortable. However, with the purpose of that, let's say, using another example, the two of you were dancers. If you ever watch dancers, especially team dancers, working together, they maintain eye contact. They start with the eye contact. They are able to sort of screen out the environment by turning on what's called the spotlight focus area of the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, which basically, once it engages, it's like what was it, Maria and Tony at the dance in West Side Story? The lights dim down and only the two of them exist. That's it. So people who train this way know that the eye contact is there so we can synchronize. That's it. Not so you can look at me critically, not so I can flirt with you, not so we can be groovy and friendly, but because we must in order to synchronize.
Well, some of our listeners are no doubt wondering right now, like, eye contact is terrifying. Like, how, if it is for them, how can they, what's a good way that they can work up to that or practice with that with their partner?
Do it with your partner and do it with people, and you'll start to build up to it. Here's what I suggest for people who are socially anxious and afraid. It's called outside meditation. It's what I teach our therapists to do. I'm going to study your face and eyes as if I'm an artist, or a scientist. I'm going to look at every detail in your eyes, all the colors, the textures. I'm going to look at the features of your face. I'm studying that while I'm relaxing my body continuously. So I continuously just relax my body as I focus on every detail of your face. This disrupts areas of the brain that allow for self-talk and for being self-conscious. I'm giving myself a task, which to you looks like I'm paying attention, I'm interested. To me, it allows me to drown out the internal voices and forces that are taking me out of the moment. And so it's a trick.
Wow, that's fascinating. I will be using that one personally. Eye contact is incredibly uncomfortable for me, and I know from your books how important it is. But I can think, let me look at the little patterns in his iris, and
you're studying.
I'm going to try that with my own partner.
Yeah, you're studying that person, and continuously as you relax, you're not looking or interested in being looked at. You're looking. And so it does work. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea that would disrupt the self-talk too, that's A+. That's because that's what I want to shut down when I'm feeling nervous in conflict with my partner. My brain gets very noisy, with the things that I'm worried about and the things that I want. But if I could shut that down and look like I'm really intensely focusing on what he's saying, I know that would make a conflict go much smoother.
And then it starts to go away, because what happens is it's not the eye contact that makes us buggy. It's the state that it engenders that we haven't regulated. So it's a novel state which makes us want to look away. However, once we start to do this, we acclimate to the state. In other words, we're able to regulate it, and we no longer are pushed away. Right? Cool. And so all you have to do is tolerate it, relax your body, and it'll go. That discomfort goes away. I know because I had it.
Yeah. Awesome.
This is a silly question, but would you say that you've obviously counseled a lot of people? Would you say the first thing that we need to, when a couple comes in and there's very little trust in the relationship, they're on the brink. Would you say that the first thing that we need to fix is the fact that they're not able to have safe, secure, or conflicts? They're not able to have that. There's really no safety in the relationship.
Right.
And obviously there's a lot that goes into how to cultivate a climate of safety. But would you say that that's kind of one of the first things that you work on is, well, we have to get safety back in this relationship. People have to be able to be honest. People have to be able to be transparent. Would you say that that's one of the most important factors?
Absolutely, in this kind of union. So two main reasons I say in each other's care why relationships won't last across the board, all relationships. One is that there is no co-created culture that is us. That is not our parents. That is not Oprah. That is not something or someone else. It is us. What do we think is a great relationship? What do we think is best? What is right? What is good? That takes going back and forth because we're shaping like a block of clay. We're shaping their art. The two of us. That's an ongoing thing. So that includes what our structure is, the hierarchy, what are rules of engagement. What are we going to do to protect each other from each other? Because as I mentioned, human primates are not easy and are very messy. So we plan for our devils, not just our angels. So structure. The other is learning how to interact when under stress. So the main problem always is the manner in which you and I will interact when one of us is under stress. We will revert to a one-person system of I, me, my, and you, you. That is natural. That's human. That's been there, always will be there, but we have to rise above it and be smarter. Therefore, we have to practice how to talk collaboratively and cooperatively under increasing amount of stress, like working out, like a team that wants to win, right? We have to practice it because it's very, very easy under stress to go into the past, which is a problem because memory is terrible. We're going to argue now about memory. To indict the other person, which compels them to protect themselves. And now we're just going to be here for a very long time. Or over-describing the problem. So it's a training, it's a learning, it's a practice. And people can actually take a timer, set it for 20 minutes where you can actually watch it. You got 20 minutes to focus on one issue. It could be a complaint that needs relief, or a decision that needs to be made, or whatever. But it has to be stressful. 20 minutes to end up, both of you, satisfied, relieved, right as rain, able to shift into another activity without residue, or better luck next time. That's the game we're playing.
Yeah.
That's the game.
I know.
A potato sack race. You work together or you don't work.
Absolutely. I know that with my own partner, as we've been together over the years, we are getting very good at noticing when the other person starts to devolve into their defensiveness. And I can imagine what that looks like.
The other person should do something.
Yeah, and we do. I like for myself, eye contact is tough for me. If he sees me looking down at the floor a lot or looking at the door like I'm ready to escape, he knows that's me. He's losing me in the conversation, and he knows what to do now to bring me back. And same with him. If I hear him getting louder or getting more defensive, or the finger comes out, I know what to say to calm him down. And in the rare instances where we can't calm each other down because the issue is too heated, we both usually agree, this one's too intense right now to continue. We're going to set it down. We're going to do something relaxing, either together or separately, and then we're going to pick it up again when we're both more regulated. But it takes practice for sure. We were not like that in the beginning.
It also takes an orientation that we're in each other's care.
Yes.
Going back to the independence thing. We're in each other's care, not our own. And therefore, I have to be the best handler I can be of Jimmy and Rikki. And by handler, I mean that I'm able to get the two of you on board without using a stick or a whip, right? There's nothing either of you could do that I wouldn't be able to handle without hurting you. That is competence. And we would do that if we were, bought an expensive horse or we had a child, right? Hopefully.
Hopefully.
But we don't do that with each other because we don't think we should. And that's a big mistake. So you are in my care. I am an expert on you. I am learning you. And if you react badly, it's actually me, not you. I have to think about what I just did to cause your reaction. That is the way secure functioning actually works. And there's neuroscience behind that as to why that is the preferred way to do this.
I love that you talk about that in the book, and you talk about repair being just so vital to,
Absolutely.
and like what you touched on just there, just to be able to have the clarity when my partner's defensive, for me to be able to stop and say, something's off here. Like, let's rewind and let's talk about why you feel like I'm attacking you, or I don't want to get the sense. I would assume that you mean that this is obviously reciprocal, that
Yes.
just because someone gets defensive doesn't mean that we are at all responsible for that per se.
No, not necessarily, but I am responsible for handling that because the person's under threat. If I don't return them to safety, I could might as well talk to the wall. I don't have an audience. I don't have one.
Right.
I
guess my question would be, I can only do so much, I guess would be they're also participating in this example.
Yes.
Would you agree that, yeah.
This a two-person psychological system is, or let's say a couple, is phenomenological, meaning that we can't really predict very much from the outside. It's intersubjective, which means it is internally experienced by one's own perceptions. So, and it also involves real time, which is faster than thinking. So we get into real time, we're going to be automatic and memory-based, reflexive,
which is not accurate.
No, and we're going to use pattern recognition, which is basically I shoot first and ask questions later.
Absolutely. You call those primitives a lot, right?
Primitive,
in the
yes.
Wired for Love. Okay.
Yes.
Primitives run the show a lot of the time, and so
during conflict, yeah.
During conflict, and at other times actually too, but these are errors that all human beings will make. We're trying to teach people to be smarter than that, and to override it by understanding how easy it is for another person to misunderstand what we're saying, for us to misunderstand. I talk.
You actually,
yeah.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to quote you. You're probably already going to say this. You said, one of the things I wrote down because I thought it was fascinating is you said, we misunderstand each other most of the time.
Most of the time.
Boy, I can relate to that statement.
I bet there's a lot of people that can relate to that. Yeah.
I can prove that. Anybody who's ever been a teacher knows that a very small portion of their audience actually can repeat back what they understand in the way the speaker understands. So we're mostly misunderstanding each other much of the time. Memory is unreliable, period.
Right.
Period. If you're fighting about memory, you're both wrong. And perception is a funhouse mirror where it's constantly changing according to our internal state of mind. So all of this can be proven. The problem is that human beings, myself included, believe that everything they say, everything they think, everything they see and hear is actually accurate and reality.
Yeah.
It isn't.
That's rough. I'm hearing that, and I can recognize it in my partner, but I can also recognize it in myself as well. right
Very
when you
hard.
say that. It is tempting to think that everything that we think and feel and see is reality, and everything they think and feel and see is wrong, but that's not
Absolutely.
how it is. Yeah.
That is not how it is, nor will it ever be that way. And so, so this is actually understanding all of us, which also makes us, I think, kinder, gentler, and more compassionate, more forgiving of ourselves and others, because we're making errors that we don't even know throughout the day all the time. And when we don't know it, it's fine. But when we do know it, that's when there's conflict, and that's when we have to be really skillful.
I wanted to bring up another quote real quick. I loved the way that you broke down, and I'd love for you to elaborate on one of the major missteps. And I know I did this, and I know there's just countless people, countless relationships that are doing this, is they don't have a structure in place. And you said if you build a shoddy structure, don't be surprised if the walls collapse and the ceilings fall. And that's what happens in so many relationships when you really get down to it. They don't have a shared mutual agreement on a structure of how this is going to work. How are we going to do X, Y, and Z? I mean, the list is infinite on how we're going to manage all these things. Would you say one of the reasons that people don't do that is, well, one, nobody told them you need to do this. And two, maybe there's a lot of fear there. I'm afraid to really tell you what I need and what I want and how I feel like this is going to work, or how I feel like this should work, because that's very vulnerable.
Well, I use metaphors like, you and I, you want to live in the country, you hate the city. I need to live in the city, I hate the country. That's a deal breaker. And then we look, at the abyss that is the end of our relationship, and one of us says, let's buy a house. And that's the attachment system. Attachment is a biological mandate that nature has built in. It's sort of nature's glue that holds us together. Otherwise, we wouldn't have communities, or we wouldn't have a civilization, wouldn't have families. So, for better or worse, that binds us together. It's the I can't quit you biology that we confuse for love. And so once I get attached to you and I start to get into my fantasies about what could happen, I'm loath to stand up for principles, because that could mean the end of the relationship. And now I'm invested in not losing anything. And that's a problem, especially for couple clinicians, because some people shouldn't be in that relationship, not because the person's evil, but because they're not compatible with their vision of what they want or what's most important. They're pointing in two different directions. So the other reason is that couples, it's the only alliance, only union that doesn't follow the rules of any other. I think it's because of emotion. We think love is all there is. Love is not enough. Love can actually cause people to do terrible things. It has to be driven by terms and conditions, like all other unions. And we just don't do that. We think we're family, and we're not. We're strangers constantly. Continuously strangers trying to get to know each other, which is a good thing. So there are all these things that get built in that make us lazy, or we don't think we should have to do it, right? There are entitlements in love relationships that there aren't in other relationships that are
Absolutely.
And that's what makes it tough.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed in Each Other's Care how you specifically address a lot of the deal breakers, and how to address some of them too, how to talk to each other about these things that are the really big things that are hard to talk about, like what you just said. I want to live in the city, I want to live in the country, or I want kids and they don't want kids.
Right.
Money,
or money,
all
yeah.
that stuff, yeah.
Or I'm a polysubstance abuser. I like my substances.
Oh, right.
I don't care as a couple therapist. I only care if the other partner doesn't agree. So again, no judgment there. Secure functioning, all it means is that you and I decide how this union is going to go. We're inventing it out of whole cloth. That relationships is an invention. And so it doesn't matter as long as we agree and that we're being honest about what we're signing on to. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
I think I hope it was you who said this, but the couple is its own new thing. It's different than either person alone. And I love that. And this might have been in your descriptions of the couple bubble too, which it just tickles me to no end when I hear my partner use that phrase, because he never talks about relationship things, but when he does mention the couple bubble. And we are our own new entity when we come together and decide these are the problems that I want to take on and face, my unique problems and their unique problems, and we're going to figure out how to solve them together.
It's a fingerprint. It can't be duplicated, which is why we mourn our losses, because there's aspects of ourselves that were brought out in that relationship that will not be brought out perhaps in any other, because it's a mixture of things that are so complex and so beyond our ability to fathom. It gets into phenomenology again and nonlinear systems, right? That it is amazing. But there are certain things we can predict, such as people are inclined to focus on where they're different and where they disagree. And that's us, right? But what is a higher level? Higher level as how do I get people on board? I have to find where we are the same and where we agree. That's how we've done it through the beginning of time. All you have to do is look at how other unions are formed by people who are of different color, different religion, different gender, different ideology even. But what makes us the same is we both want to make money on this thing. We both want to win this sports game. We both want to survive in the foxhole, or we all do, right? That is the unifier, and that's a higher level of thinking. That's what
for my partner and I, we both want a happy, healthy relationship. That's one of our stated goals. And there are a lot of ways that we're different that seem to make that difficult. But when we keep our goal in mind, it kind of helps steer us back to, okay, I think differently about this and you think differently about that, but we have this shared goal. We can find compromise and work together in order to make that happen for each other.
And then you build in shared principles of how you're going to do that, which don't involve feeling or emotion. Because you can't legislate feeling. You can only legislate, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're never going to do. So say us both. Right? That has to happen.
Jimmy and I were talking before this, and he asked he brought up a great question that we wanted to talk to you. What does a couple do when somebody in the partnership is very resistant to this couplehood and stated goals? Because there are a lot of listeners who are going to be thinking, this all sounds wonderful, but I'm all in with this idea of couplehood and a couple bubble, but my partner is very resistant or running away or doesn't want to hear about it. Do you have advice for them?
Yeah, but it's not going to be pleasant.
Oh, no. Okay. But it's necessary, though, I'm
real,
sure.
yeah.
Neither are wrong. And I want to stress that neither person is wrong. Everyone has a right to live the life that they want to live, or to form a relationship the way they want the relationship. All they need to do is find someone who's in agreement. So you have one partner who wants to do secure functioning, shared power, shared authority, fully collaborative, fully mutual at all times, right? Okay, hard to do, by the way. The other person, and I like doing what I like to do, and I like it so much when you're independent, and that's fair. I'm not that interested. That is a deal breaker. I'm sorry, because it's fundamentally at odds with the core values and interests of both parties. And this is where people have to sort of straighten up and fly right and look at the bigger picture. Why are you even doing this? It cannot be cut for love. It cannot be for any emotion. It has to be the best deal you got that you can possibly get with somebody.
And that goes back to just how so many people, myself included, have fallen into this camp of just getting lulled to sleep in your marriage. But long-term relationships are the same, but especially in marriages. I mean, I just find that the more I learn about this, how quickly couples, especially when kids get involved and the stress of life and jobs and all that stuff, you get lulled into this complacency, and it's extremely dangerous. It's just extremely dangerous to the couple bubble.
Right.
And I find that, like you said earlier, people they think that they want this relationship, but they're not actually in agreement, and they're not yielding to their partner equally. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. There's a really dangerous message too that's been going on forever in music and movies, that if it's love, it's easy, And if it's love, I won't have to try. I won't have to struggle, and
I won't have to work.
I won't have to work.
In the beginning, that's fairly true because we're on drugs.
Sure.
And
Right, exactly.
Sure.
And we don't know the pain in the ass that is this other person, and that we are too, right?
Yep.
And so it's naivety is what it is. So here's, Jimmy, you and I decide that let's say we want to put in a principle where we are fully and completely transparent with each other at all times. We tell each other everything. Right. And you go, or I go, okay, sure. That sounds okay. If that's the limit, that's the as far as we go, that's never going to work. You have to then ask me, why, Stan, do you want this for yourself? Why do you want to adopt this for yourself? Other people don't. If I can't defend it as a personal, selfish need, value, you should not take the deal, right? The same with you. And so vetting these ideas is more important, actually, than anything. Because if we don't buy into this, we're not going to do it when it counts, right? So you and I are coming up with things that make an awesome life and make us completely safe and secure from each other. We're placing the bar high, so we're expected to do it even when we don't feel like it, and especially. So the take home here is we decide what is right and good, and we do it even if it's the hardest thing to do.
It's because we have a shared goal.
Yeah. Especially if it's the hardest thing to do. Otherwise, you might make the agreement.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking
Rikki,
of all those hard things to do. There are so many. I do have a lot of them in my own relationship, and the ones that seem to be really good for my relationship and partnership are the tough things for me to do sometimes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you really signed on and they're going to make the relationship better, your quality of life better, do you find that when you do come through that your self-esteem goes up?
Absolutely. And my security in the relationship as well. When I find myself doing the things that are tough, I see him light up and I see us function more smoothly. And I think, all right, I can do this difficult thing if it results in this wonderful advancement of our relationship. Yeah.
That's the secret thing that most people don't experience, is that when you place a value or a principle and you abide by it, regardless of whether it's easy or not, that doing it involves character. And one is rewarded by the idea that I did the right thing, even though it was the hardest thing to do in the moment, but I did it.
Yep.
I wanted to touch on real quick something that is, when I read, you're talking about super hard things that we have to do. And this obviously struck a chord with me, and I'm sure that a lot of people, you said, do I have permission to come to you next time when you do, X, Y, or Z? do you agree to yield immediately? And that is such a beautiful concept of just like, let's not forget we're on the same team. Let's not let this conflict get away from us. Will you yield if I say, hey, you're doing the thing again? Like that's extremely difficult when you're defensive, when you feel unfairly attacked, when you're, I don't know, whatever it may be. It's very difficult to be able in that state to yield to the other person, but it's so important that we're able to do that.
It's really important, and people really should remember that you can't work with another person without previous agreement and permission to do it. I have to have your permission to govern you. You have to get my permission to govern me. Otherwise, it's the Wild West. We'll just violate each other. And so we're both working to the same end. And where this comes from, this, think of it as a guardrail. I'm doing something that really irritates you while we're working on something, and it's getting in the way of discourse. I have an interest in that too, but I don't know I'm doing it. I can't see my face. It's reflexive for me. I do it automatically. Therefore, I can't say I won't do it again. I need to get you involved by saying, the next time I do that, cue me, prompt me, remind me, and I will cooperate immediately.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but that takes a massive amount of humility and self-awareness, doesn't it? But so important.
I'm afraid you can't do secure functioning if you can't tolerate pain.
I agree.
I love what you said there too, because it reminds people also that when our partner's doing that thing, when they're making that face, when they're using that tone, they're most often not aware of what they're doing to you with that. And that's just part of the empathy in your message that I absolutely love in everything that you write. The idea that our partners aren't out to get us and they're not trying to make our lives miserable. They're just really largely unaware of how they push our buttons during these conflicts.
We're only conscious in terms of higher cortical areas that are very expensive to run. We only run those areas little throughout the day for energy conservation. Therefore, most of our day is relegated to automation, memory that's cheap, that basically we're just acting and reacting by memory. That's a good thing until it isn't. So I'm going to do the same stupid things again and again, not because I'm evil, but because there's no way I'm going to remember that. I'm not going to remember that. I'm going to do it. Therefore, the solution is to employ you. Just like I can't see food in my teeth or what's on my back. That's what partnership is. We can get each other out of habits. We can make each other, get each other to do things we ordinarily wouldn't do if we want that. But we need to use each other, otherwise we'll never do it. So it's a feature, not a bug, right? It makes us better at problem solving, better at creating, better at getting along. It makes our relationship easier and less stressful, which is what we want, because nothing else is easy in life. But our relationship is. If you ever watch Tracy and I on any given day, we give each other full permission. Basically, it's either stop it or do it. So just think of that. It really is. Don't hold on, wait, stop. Okay, go. Right? Yeah, we're both doing this. We're both doing this, and we get a lot done. And we don't bristle at this. We don't bristle. Then
That's the difference.
No, you go. Okay, all right, done. We may express playfully our resentment of being told what to do, but we still do it because that's how we roll.
I personally am.
Sorry, Rikki.
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm personally really thankful for when my partner says, you're doing that thing again. You know, I actually really like it. I didn't in the beginning. It was very annoying. But once I got used to it and got used to the idea that he's helping me to get out of those habits, those automatic ways that I'm reacting.
As long as he's okay with and going in the other direction, it has to go in both
yes,
directions.
It does for sure. I throw a lot of "you're doing that thing again" at him too.
Yeah.
And that reminds me a lot of what you talk in the book about accepting each other's influence. You know, I wanted to throw a quote out for you because it's definitely what we're talking about. You said, "Of all the human relational mistakes, the refusal to put our relationship first above ourselves is one of the greatest failings." And I resonated so much with that, which is just, I know you said in the beginning, it's not necessarily putting it first. It's like putting both of us first. Yeah. But we just so often, I'm sure you time and time again have couples sitting in front of you and you're like, you're not putting the relationship first, or at least you're not putting it at the same level that you are.
Right.
And that is the beginning of the end. When you're not putting the relationship at the same level that as you are or above, you know, prioritizing it, then that's the beginning of an erosion of some sort of trust or intimacy or whatever.
The relationship is co-created. It's a shared mythology that we co-created, right? So we place it higher than ourselves, because it's not only aspirational, but it's also governing. It keeps us in our place and it keeps us doing what we say we want. So, that's an important thing. If the relationship doesn't come first, we'll fragment and will eventually accrue threat. And people should just keep in mind that this has been well studied. What people lament the most end of life is the relationships that they messed up. All that seems to matter to us, basically, are our deepest, closest, and cherished relationships. And so there's a reason why we put them first, is because we want coherency, we want cohesion, we want harmony, we want to hold on to each other in all relationships as best we can, as long as people are, good faith actors, right? And whenever we put ourselves first in a union of equals, it is picked up as unfriendly and as, well, I guess you don't care about ours. Therefore, we're going to have to take that up. And now we're adversarial, see? So it's a mind trick to take care of myself and you, Jimmy, at the same time. But I have to. We both have to be right as rain. We both have to be okay. Otherwise, we can't work together. Something will fail. I have to make sure you are good, as you have to make sure I am good. Otherwise, we're going to be spending a lot of unnecessary time bumping into each other, yelling at each other, arguing with each other. And anything that's unfair has to be taken up immediately, because it puts the person who's acting unfairly in jeopardy.
And being able to bring up those complaints or bringing up those disagreements is so vital to be able to...
In the moment.
in the moment.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. You don't want to get into an argument about last night, because you're going to argue about memory. You do it in the moment. You correct the behavior in the moment. That's more likely to help that person to learn for the next time. And then the other person apologizes and you move forward. That's it.
My own relationship made a dramatic shift when we agreed to bring things up in the moment instead of holding on to them and waiting for a good time to talk. It was actually my partner's request. He said, when you start feeling like something's bothering you, I actually want you to say it to me immediately. And I didn't even realize that was an option, but so to have him say that to me, I want to know right now. I don't want you holding on to this until at night or next Tuesday,
It sounds like he's very smart about this, because that is good housekeeping. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I think he had good examples. He had his parents seemed to resolve conflict well, and I think that made a big difference for him.
And that's where we get a lot of this, is we saw it in our family of origin, but unfortunately a lot of people didn't.
And I did not so much. So yeah, I'm glad that I could get some of that from his parents, passing that on down to him.
Jimmy, are you, I know more about Rikki in this short time than I know about you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
you
don't have anything to be sorry about.
I'm an over talker, so I have to purposely, I just want to, sometimes I have a goal to listen. I'm sorry. What do you want to know? I'm an open book.
I should be like you too. Well, I have that same problem. Are you also, I mean, because you're interested obviously in this stuff, you're in a relationship?
Fascinated. I'm fascinated. So, quick backstory. My wife and I have been married for 10 years this coming year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Earlier in my marriage, unfortunately, I had an affair. And so that wrecked the marriage as it does any marriage. And we were very close to divorce. We were just obviously in a bad spot. So she gave me a chance to rebuild trust that I didn't deserve. And so I took it and ran with it. And I dug deep into everything about, as you know, it's like peeling back an onion. As soon as you get started, there's just layers, and then you just keep getting deeper. So I became just fascinated with this world of like, what does a relationship need to survive, and why do people stray? And even if they don't stray, how do they betray each other's trust even in a faithful marriage? How are they continually doing things that are just not conducive to the growth and the this relationship ever thriving? And so I just became obviously fascinated, probably from a self-preservation. I wanted my marriage to survive, and I wanted to be the father and the husband that I believe God called me to be. So I obviously I wanted to do the work, and the more I learned about the work, the more fascinating it became, of just learning about it, and hopefully being able to, I don't want to call myself a teacher, but I want to be able to teach people whatever I've learned so that they don't make the same mistakes that I've made, and they understand just a little bit more about relationships and how important they are in our lives, and how we can go about protecting them instead of unintentionally working against the health of the relationship.
And if we did a deep dive investigation into that marriage, we would have found that there were structural problems that led to it.
Massive structural problems, obviously.
Yeah, usually found in the structure. Usually people don't believe that.
Yeah, and that's not to say that I obviously the first rule of affair recovery is to make sure you're not blaming the other person. However, the more you learn about affair recovery, you learn that so oftentimes there's structural issues.
I think I think the only way us humans will ever learn is through suffering, unfortunately. There is no human on the planet that is interested really in doing a deep dive into their history, the whys and what fors of their parents and how they came to be, unless they're forced to because they're in intense pain. That is, again, the human condition. And so a lot of this learning comes from suffering and loss and regret. And this has been studied. Those that don't regret don't learn. And that it's important to sit with that misery of, oh my God, I just made a mess of this. As opposed to the partner that is to blame, right?
Right. And I think that's something that has strangely helped me to feel kind of grateful for my divorce. I know that's a strange thing to say, but there's so much I wouldn't have learned about myself. There's so much I wouldn't be able to share with other people had that not fallen apart so catastrophically like it did.
Same here. Yeah. Same here.
I wanted to ask you a quick question,
Sure.
Dr. Tatkin. This is a silly question, and there's no right answer. Sorry. So the more I learn about relationships, and I'm fascinated with them, I'm passionate about learning about them, would you find that the more you learn relationship health, building a safe, secure relationship is more simple or more complex? And the reason I say that is because the more that I learn what it takes for a secure, healthy, safe relationship, things like trust and, being able to rely on each other and being able to lean on each other and being able to submit to each other or yield to each other, as you might have said, that's kind of simple. I mean, I'm sure that when you have people in your practice, you can see pretty quickly, well, you don't have any trust in your relationship, or you don't have any intimacy, or there's an unequal power dynamic. And that's kind of simple. But at the same time, the more I learn, the more complex it gets, because you start to realize, well, why is there so much resistance to vulnerability? Or why is there so much resistance? Why is there so much fear here? How do we, once we try to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to solve this? It gets a little bit complex, obviously. So what's your take on that? Are things, do you find yourself getting towards more like what you said before, where you're like, well, there's just certain things that aren't compatible with a safe, secure relationship? Or is it like, well, it gets really complex if you actually want to make this work?
It's elegantly simple. A lot of this is what we learned in kindergarten and we've forgotten. It's elegantly simple. The problem is, because of the nature of who we are, it's also immensely difficult, because there's nothing more difficult than another person up close. And in these dependency type relationships, there are so many complicating factors, including, but not just, memory that goes all the way back to our earliest caretakers. That is being evoked. And so the idea here of working together, being in service to one another, has been long understood in philosophy, in leadership, in all sorts of other areas of study, including the survival of our species. That we know this stuff. The doing it is the hard part, because, as I said, we have entitlements and expectations in love relationships that are not appropriate in a two-person system of equals. That's one. Two, most people, all people, who come in and they don't trust each other, or they are fighting all the time, didn't start that way, they both are accountable for that. The way they did business, the way they played the game was wrong. And so it's harder to unwind that. I just say it is harder, because when people accrue a lot of memory that is threatening, that's a biological matter, but injustice, which has to do with resentment and unfairness, it's harder for them to move forward properly and rebuild, because they still want their justice. And unfortunately, the justice they seek commits an injustice to the other person, and so the beat goes on, you see.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a snowball effect that people have a hard time getting out of. That's why I like teaching people in the very beginning how not to accrue threat by learning the humility and falling on your sword completely. That was invented long ago because people would go to war. People would, want a duel because you insulted me, sir. Right? Nobody learned to repair. So it's a vital thing to do if you want to hold on to relationships. But also, here's the bottom line of what we're trying to accomplish. We do know that loneliness is at an all-time high, and being lonely for us as pack animals is a killer. We'll die sooner, we're more unhappy, and we're more vulnerable to physical and mental illness. Now, just being in a relationship is no prophylactic against that, no protection. Because if the relationship is insecure functioning, it is going to accrue threat, which is basically interpersonal stress gone haywire. Chronic interpersonal stress will also kill us sooner and lead to mental, physical ill health, and will also actually affect our children's autoimmune systems, because they're being affected by the environment, which is the two heads of household, the big bells, they're the little bells. So this is extremely important. The reason we repair is to right the ship to do the right thing, regardless of whether we think we did something. If our partner thinks that we did it, it therefore it happened, and we fix it. No sweat off of me unless I need to be right. We do this because we're protecting and cherishing the relationship, which takes a higher level of morality and of judgment that I can't know whether I'm to blame or not. I default to you, and I care more about the relationship than I do being right. That is a higher level of function, and that is what keeps relationships together, at least in a big reason. Also, it's a health issue. It really is a health issue, and people don't understand if they don't repair that they're actually getting closer to death in the interim, because we go through an existential crisis as primates when there's a breach in the attachment system. We actually, a part of us wonders whether the relationship will exist tomorrow. That puts us into a state of mind that is very primitive, like we did in infancy. If mommy dies, I die. That's why that's why one of the reasons Tracy and I have a rule. We can go to bed angry, but we have to at least touch toes.
I love that.
I remember you saying
Oh,
that.
yeah.
The touching toes is a psychobiological intervention that signals unequivocally, even though I hate you right now, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're still in this together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a health matter that people just don't understand. That there's a tick-tock between breach in the relationship, getting angry, disagreement, and reunion. And if people understood that, they would repair quicker, even just based on that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are other problems with not repairing quickly.
I have I think a good maybe final question would be, and it's not necessarily a short question, but a good final question would be, how do people know when they're perhaps bending or giving too much? Because a lot of I know that in an ideal relationship, we're both working toward the greater good of the relationship, but a lot of the people listening right now are not in the kind of relationships where the other person is giving enough to make it worth it. And we'd love to hear from an expert such as yourself if there are some good indicators that we are in a relationship that perhaps is not healthy for us. Maybe we need to get out. What are some good ways to know that?
Well, it's two parts here. If I'm a real team player, I should be able to know when I am creating an imbalance, right? And I should worry about it, because if I create an imbalance, I'll pay for that. There's nothing. Would you
say? Do you mean overgiving being an imbalance?
No, overtaking.
Overtaking. Okay.
So I am taking advantage. I am not monitoring whether this is fair and just for you, whether this is okay for you. I'm not concerned. Therefore, I'm more likely to be opportunistic and to take liberties. That's stupid for me. It's suicide for me. And I want people to understand that in a two-person system, anything I do to the other person that's unfair is going to come back to me in some form. There's no way I won't pay for it. If I win and you lose, there's no way I won't pay for that. If there's an inequity, there's no way I won't pay for that. That is just completely insane.
Yes.
Right? And so
If you want a safe, secure relationship.
right.
obviously.
And if I want to sleep at night without having to keep my eyes open. Right? So this is human nature. So that's the responsibility of the other partner to go, are you okay? Do you need help? Am I putting too much on your plate? I really appreciate all the things you're doing, Rikki. I love.
Can you imagine the millions of people that have never heard that and would just love to hear that? I mean, just what you said right there. There are so many people that have never heard, are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you? I mean, it's sad. That's what breaks my heart about this whole thing is how many people are in relationships where they've never said that or heard that. And that's so tragic. But I'm sorry to cut you off.
Well, not because, look, everything we do is selfish. let's face it, everything we do, there's only one thing I can think of that isn't selfish, and that is the immediate running into a burning building to save somebody. I'm not thinking, I'm just doing that. But even altruism is selfish. I'm getting something for that, right? So nothing wrong with that. But to be selfish and not pro-relationship at the same time without taking care of your interests is just plain suicide. Because I'm not looking at the downstream effects. I'm looking at what I want now, and it's going to cause me trouble. So from a selfish point of view, I don't want to hear about resentment. I don't want to litigate taking advantage of you when I could have actually paid attention and done the right thing, because we're tied together. Our fates are tied. So that's first answer. For the person who's feeling this, you know when you're feeling resentful.
Yeah.
If you're feeling resentful, it's time to say, hey, we got to talk about this. This is not fair. It's in your interest to pay attention to this. Let's work on the problem, not you. We're not going to work on you.
Oh, I love that.
We're going to work on
Yes.
the problem together, because neither of us can afford to be in this position, because the consequences are not good.
I think I picked up on a lot of that in this new book. What I liked was when you go through a bunch of different scenarios and a bunch of different couples dialogues, like this is an unhealthy couple talking. This is the healthy version of what they should have both said to each other. And I love the way that you break that down for a number of different reasons. One, you like, people aren't, when they're arguing, you show how how quickly we get off topic. Like, you're not really concerned about the other person's feelings, or like, somebody comes at you, even if they come at you critical or accusatory, we're so natural to just get defensive or start arguing about something else, arguing about memory, whatever it may be. But rarely do we just sit with that person and be like, what are they actually complaining about or feeling? What did they need from me in this situation? And instead we both go off the rails and now we're arguing about something that happened 5 years ago. Now we're arguing about when we say, will you always or you never. Now we're arguing the details of the fight, which don't matter. Nothing's going to get resolved, because no one ever actually took the time to say, what exactly do you need from me, or what are you feeling? But what I was actually going to say was, I love the way that you say, eventually that person has to be assertive about, hey, like, this is what I need in this relationship. Like, this relationship can't work without this,
I would recommend that people dispense with the word healthy unless you're talking about foods and lifestyle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is not a matter of, it's a matter of what can work and what can never work. What can work and what can never work. I can never argue you out of your perception. It'll never work. It'll never happen. I can never, be safe if I've hurt you without repairing it. That's not going to work. If all I have to do is look at the trajectory, all I have to do is understand myself. That's not going to work, right? So we're talking about, if we're a team, and we are in charge of everyone and everything. We're the top of the food chain. You and I are the center of the universe, and as such, we have to be okay with each other at all times. Otherwise, we can't get anything done. So it is a matter of what can work and what can never work. So
like
that's really what it is. It's tactical. It is not about emotion. It is tactical, knowing how human beings operate. If I do something and you pay a price and I benefit, I'm definitely going to pay for it. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that.
Well,
think.
For our listeners, Stan's new book is In Each Other's Care, A Guide to the Most Common Relationship Conflicts and How to Work Through Them. If you want to, if what he said today resonated and you want more elegantly simple ways that relationships can be so difficult, there's a lot more of it in that book. My favorite book, Wired for Love, is something I will never stop recommending to people. And I'm super excited to hear that you have a new version coming out. I'll be reading that too. Maybe my partner will give it a reread. It's been a few years now. Maybe I'll see if we'll both read it together.
It sounds like you picked well. It sounds your partner
thank you.
is aligned with this idea.
Yeah. He doesn't have much choice, though, since this is what I do for work. This is like my dinner table conversation most of the time. So
there you go. Join them, right? But yeah, both of you are wonderful, by the way.
Thanks. Thank you, Stan.
I'm already attached to you.
Oh,
You're very kind.
Want to see a movie?
Yeah.
I would. Well, yeah, this was lovely. I'm a huge fan. I know Jimmy's a fan as well. So we were really excited to have you on here.
We're very honored. We don't feel worthy, but that's beside
Come on. You know what? I'm an idiot like everybody else. This is hard for me to do. I'm not, I don't pretend that what I'm espousing here is easy. It isn't easy,
Yeah.
but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to say, nothing else is going to work if you want longevity and happiness.
That's so true.
I think it was Terry Cole told me we're all fellow travelers here. None of us who talk about this stuff have it all figured out. We're all trying to figure it out. But I love being able to sit in a virtual room here with other people who are this passionate about this topic. So thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's been fun.
And thank you for so much for your work.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there anywhere else that you'd like people to, your website or?
Yeah, if you're in the mental health field and you want training of a polytheoretical approach that takes a while to really kind of understand, go to thepactinstitute.com. That's the PACT Institute.com. If you are a couple or a clinician with a partner and you want to do couple training, workshopping, my partner Tracy and I do that throughout the year online.
Cool.
And we have a luxury retreat coming up next year
Ooh, really?
Wow.
in Portugal. Yeah. And those are
Cool.
they're amazing.
Wow. Oh, that sounds
That's
awesome.
fantastic. What a great perk of the job.
I know.
It is. We get to, but the couple that organizes this, we did Spain last year and we've done Tuscany.
Oh
and
my gosh.
I really recommend. They're wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
That's
And is
fantastic.
that, where do people go to find information on that?
To thepactinstitute.com.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Awesome. Asking for a friend. Of course, I'm not going to be going immediately to look that up. That sounds great.
And social media, it's always at Dr. Stan Tatkin.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay. Cool.
We can't thank you enough again for doing this. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's great spending time with both of you. Really.